let's go from SEC country to Big Ten country, shall we? Because we have a couple schools here that made coaching changes under very different circumstances, but both made very good hires, Garrett. We're talking about Michigan and Penn State. Michigan, obviously, all the Sharon Moore stuff that came out right at the end of the regular season this year was absolutely insane, crazy for everyone involved. And then you have Penn State, who was one of the first big programs to actually fire their coach in James Franklin so they could get out ahead of this. And then they had the most chaotic coaching search just from a sheer number of candidates that they had to bring in before eventually coming back around to Matt Campbell. Michigan hired Kyle Whittingham, semi out of retirement, I guess, from Utah. It was a weird situation how that ended there. But which one of those two programs do you think made the best hire to compete right away?
Look, Trey, this isn't necessarily a super fair question to me because I'm so biased. Not only because, yeah, I got a soft spot for Michigan and I want to kind of just believe that that's going to be okay, but also because I've had a soft spot for Utah and I really respect Kyle Whittingham and all that he's done over there. To me, the Michigan head coaching job kind of feels like the prayer at Jordan-Hare, like where your quarterback objectively throws an interception, but three guys muff it and then it just bounces accidentally into your receiver's hands so he can go score. Like, Michigan had an unforeseen, nobody could really see that coming. I mean, obviously, I think some people had an idea of what was happening and were trying to make sure that things went the correct way. Maybe some of them weren't. I'm not going to try to litigate that whole thing, but obviously, for I think the majority of the fan base, for the majority of the players, for all of that, this was out of left field. And then what happens is you get one of the most consistent, one of the best head coaches that has been doing it for 20 years at his previous stop. Who just falls into your lap and he's just interested, ready to go, and ready to kind of rock. Kyle Whittingham's a fantastic coach. You got to remember that Michigan did just win a championship a couple years ago to kick off this Big Ten dominant streak that we're currently living in. Kyle Whittingham, he's always kind of had his guys playing physical. I think that matches Michigan. I think if you could tell me that Michigan's going to come with that same sort of tough streak and attitude that Utah's been playing with, I think a lot of Michigan fans will take that one. I think ultimately they've fallen short because of elite talent issues, right? I don't think Utah has necessarily had the most elite talent. And then obviously they had some quarterback issues the last couple of years. The Cam Rising health debacle has been, front of mind for me out there with Utah. That's not really an issue with Michigan. They've got their quarterback. They've got a growing and rising quarterback in that situation. And they definitely can get the talent that they want to up there. They're talented enough. They can get the roster they need to. Obviously, the circumstances were not optimal, but if I'm looking at both situations, getting this kind of a coach versus Penn State kind of did it the right way, and they kind of tried to get out in front of the coaching cycle, fire your coach early, don't stand for it, start the process, and they were one of the last teams to hire a coach anyways because they just couldn't find the right fit, they couldn't find the right guy. Eventually, they end up with Matt Campbell, who I don't hate as a hire. I think he's going to do a pretty good job there. I would much rather be Michigan in this situation where it felt like everything fell together for them in just the perfect way.
Well, allegedly, with the Matt Campbell Penn State thing, that was one of their first couple of candidates, but someone fumbled the exchange along the lines of communication between Penn State and Matt Campbell's agent. Somebody didn't return a phone call or something like that, and it was just okay. Well, we got to move on to the next guy.
The Notebook, where he delivered the letters and they're your mom held him for the whole time and you got 365. What are we talking about?
By reports, I mean, they were just laughing about it at his introductory press conference, but
Matt Campbell and his goofy hat. What do you want?
It makes a lot of sense though, because he should have been very high on their list with what he's done at a historically very difficult place to win at Iowa State. He's the only head coach that's ever won 10 games in Ames, and it's been a long time that they've been playing college football in Ames, Iowa. I think it's very interesting to compare these two because not only, like you mentioned, there were two very different circumstances for how they're hired, two guys that have had a ton of success at different levels of programs, right? Kyle Whittingham, Gary, pop quiz. Do you know who he took over for at Utah?
Is that Urban who just left?
Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
That's how long that he has been the head coach at Utah. It's his only head coaching job ever. He took over in 2004 for Urban Meyer. Crazy to think about where we're at in a
Yeah.
college football space, thinking about that now he is making a jump to another school. And for Matt Campbell, he took over an Iowa State program that was maybe, not, it was not the doldrums that it had been in previous years, but it wasn't necessarily in the best spot. And he really figured out a way to get the most out of talent, got some really real NFL level players coming in on, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And, he had some head coach experience before at Toledo, but it was certainly his first big time job. But all that being said, these are two guys that have been entrenched at their current positions for a long time. They're making this jump to the Big Ten, and they both have very interesting carryovers to talk about. Jason Beck is coming over with Kyle Whittingham from Utah. I think that's going to be a fantastic offensive coordinator to
Mhm.
maximize the talents that he has in Bryce Underwood. I think Bryce Underwood has a lot of the same skill set as what we saw of Devin Dampier this year, and so many other quarterbacks that Jason Beck has kind of um, tutored at Utah. And then you have Matt Campbell bringing over most of his roster from Iowa State that still has eligibility to come up and be the
Yeah.
Penn State Fighting Cyclones. So it's going to be really interesting year one. Now, longevity wise, I'm wondering if Kyle Whittingham is just a short term stable decision to stabilize for a few years and maybe kind of similar to what Utah did, start to bring up a head coach in waiting under him. I think that's maybe the ideal situation. I know Kyle says he has a lot of years left under him. He is getting up there in age. He's been a head coach for over 20 years. Matt Campbell, younger guy, still in his 40s. I think long term, I'm probably buying more Penn State stock, but that doesn't mean that I don't think Michigan can. Michigan is going to be successful under Kyle Whittingham. They're going to win 8, 9, 10 games every year that he's the head coach there. I'm pretty sure. But long
Yeah.
term, I think Matt Campbell, given the resources that Penn State has, given what he's done with lesser resources, he could build an absolute monster in Happy Valley.
Oh yeah, I think the way that this is interesting to me between these two teams is I think Michigan definitely has the more like. I think if you were to tell me like if I gun to my head I got to pick one of these teams to make the playoff this year, I'm picking Michigan because I believe in the talent more. I believe in Kyle Whittingham to get to that. Like we've seen Kyle Whittingham in the Rose Bowl, like we've seen him coach at that super high level. I think that that can still happen at Michigan. For me, Matt Campbell is really interesting because he's. I almost wonder and I don't know exactly how to phrase this, but so I wrote some of this down in the notes. Iowa State had 6 seasons of 7+ wins since 1979 up until he took over, and he did it every year except two. But there were only like a couple of those years that were like really elite years. There were just a lot of like very good football seasons in there as well. Um, Penn State fired James Franklin for not being able to get over the hump and get to that elite level. And I almost wonder if this isn't just like, okay, we're going to just try something else because we have to. Like, uh, uh, I understand. And I think we even made this comparison back when it happened. But like when you fired James Franklin, that could have been, similar to when Georgia went out and hired Kirby Smart, right? Was where they said, okay, we're going to fire a good coach to get the great coach. I don't think that they got the great coach in this situation. I think Matt Campbell's a very good coach, and I think he can build a good program. But Penn State doesn't want to be a very good program that ends up like fourth or fifth or sixth in the Big Ten. Like they wanted to compete. That was the expectation this year. We were all talking about in the offseason. Like this is Penn State's year. This is the year for them. If it's not going to happen this year, it's never going to happen for Penn State. Well, it didn't happen this year, and so I don't know. I don't know exactly where this program goes. I almost wonder if this is just going to be a very good. Now, maybe with more resources, we start to see more out of Matt Campbell. Obviously, like what Iowa State was, maybe not able to necessarily give everything that he was able to use. So maybe with some more resources, some more money, give him a wideout once a year, like that might be really good for him. I just don't know for sure that he's going to be able to bring them to that elite level. I think that they'll be good consistently for a while. I just don't know that that's what their fans want.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think if you look at the year by year record for Matt Campbell, right, there's a lot. There's some good, like you said. There's only a couple. There's a couple years, where they're playing in New Year's Six or New Year's Six adjacent bowls. I would say 2020 they went to the Big 12 championship game, went to the Fiesta Bowl and won it, and then 2024 the Pop-Tarts Bowl after falling short in the Big 12 championship. So those are the high points. The in between is a little bit of a mixed bag. I agree,
Mm-hmm.
but he's overachieving more often than not. And I think those big
Sure.
drop off years, the one unforgivable year for me for Matt Campbell was 2021. You're fresh off of playing for a
Mm-hmm.
Big 12 championship. You have your quarterback coming back in Brock Purdy. You have Brees Hall running the rock, and you go 7-6. That was a red flag, and that was honestly when a lot of people were saying, "Hey, Campbell, you probably should have jumped ship after that
Yeah,
high
but
point."
how good is Brock Purdy and Brees Hall anyways? I mean, those guys aren't like bona fide NFL starters, are they?
Yeah, I mean, who's to say? I think
Next.
Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. Like, he's obviously not going to amount to anything. But, anyways, I
uh,
think that he more often than not overachieves. And I'm really
yeah.
excited to see what he can do with the resources because he's not going to have those reload years, right? Those
Mm-hmm.
rebuild years, I should say. He's going to be more often, if he's able to work the portal better than James Franklin did, which I don't think is setting a necessarily super high bar. I know James Franklin got some talent, and we were
Right.
really, boy, I was excited about the wide receiver core he brought in this offseason through the transfer portal, and I know Mitch was too. I
Yeah.
think that if you can clear that bar, you're in good shape to not have those rebuilding years, and that's going to be
Yes.
key for him to sustain success. But both of these guys, Garrett, are going to be players in the Big Ten. I'm really excited to
Mm-hmm.
see
And
what they can
it's going to
what they can
keep the
do.
Big Ten extremely competitive, which is the good point. Like,
Yeah,
we obviously have like Ohio State's great and Indiana's great and Oregon's great. And like, there's some teams at the top that are obviously fantastic. Duh. But being able to let like Michigan and Penn State stay at the top and not watch them just fall off because coaching situations, I think it's going to be really good for the conference. And it's going to be great for college football since we're going to have so many good matchups week in and week out up north in the Big Ten
yeah, I'm
or
right there
out
with you.
west.
Yeah, or out west, not necessarily up north anymore.